But hopefully that gave you just a start of thinking about that, even having that conversation. We don't even talk about that in schools. We don't even talk. If we did, we would not have schools giving 10 and 12 reading screenings to children, for the most part, who are learning to read. By the way, I had that experience with my own kid. I sent my child off to school when he's now taller than me, but when he was a first grader, he hopped in the car and he goes, "Mom, the library's closed for 2 weeks." And I said, "What are you talking about? The library's closed for 2 weeks." My mother was a librarian, so he goes, "Well, we have to do all of those," I think he said assessments. "I think we have to do all of those assessments." And I said, "What are you talking about? You got to do all those assessments. What's happening?" He goes, "Well, we all go to the library. They did the STAR, they did DIBELS, they did all the subtests of DIBELS. This is a very high, 100% of children in this school by grade 3 are reading. Okay? All the DIBELS, STAR, couple of other things, but long story short, close the library for 2 weeks. Well, you can do that math. There's about 16 weeks per semester. They're going to do that about 3 times per year. So, and I said, oh my gosh, we lost the forest for the trees when we are closing the library in the name of improving literacy. I mean, it's happening, right? It's happening. Here's one you can also probably relate to, and it is kind of makes you laugh a little bit, but it's real serious. Like children who are getting Tier 3 intervention to the exclusion of any enrichment opportunity, any playground time. Guess what? That stuff matters. I mean, you get outside of our world, go to a cocktail party, and talk to the most successful people. They weren't like us. They weren't. They don't feel that way about it. I'm on a school board with mostly business people, and somebody said one time, I had never heard it before, but I don't run with that crowd, which was doctors make A's, lawyers make B's, and CEOs make C's. And like they all want to be CEOs. Like it's just, there's something to social skill development and opportunities to practice that, and by the way, I know personally when I was in elementary school, I didn't go so I could, learn to read. I was interested in what's the special puppet making activity today. Like I just got to get to the puppet. That's what I'm here for. I mean, that's called normal. That's what children want to do. Have you ever been asked to do something you're not good at and to persist at it? That's become the experience of our academically vulnerable children. And we've taken away everything that's fun or relaxing in the name of intensifying instruction. Absolutely, we have to intensify instruction. We need to be smarter about how we do it. The way you do that is you save time doing things that aren't going to benefit that child. Okay, so there's a guy named Atul Gawande. Does anybody follow him or like him? I love him. Yeah, the Checklist Manifesto, yes. He has a new book called Being Mortal. It's really good. I follow him on Facebook, so I read his posts every day. And anyway, he's a great speaker. He did a TED Talk, and I feel like it would be just a dynamite. If I ever got to run a school, people like me always have a fantasy about getting to run a school. Not for a whole year, for about a week. But if I did, I would totally do, I know which faculty development activity I would do. I would do his talk. It's only 10 minutes. It's a TED Talk. It's online. And he's talking about really the ideas that are in the Checklist Manifesto. And it's all implementation science, although he's not citing Dean Fixon. He should be. But he's talking about, in complex systems, how do we get the things that count to happen with quality? Which is what we're all about too. And the point that he makes is, and it's very relatable, he says, in medicine, we've become so uber specialized in medical care in the United States that literally, and I know this, my husband's a physician, so I can relate to this because he will call the orthopedic surgeon he's an ER doctor, nobody likes to hear from him in the middle of the night, but he will call the orthopedic surgeon who is on call, who will say something to the effect of, "Oh, I'm so sorry that his arm is broken, but I only work on the pinky finger. That's all I can do." And that truly is the way it has become in the United States. So he says we have all of these uber specialized, completely disconnected systems of care, none of which talk to each other. Well, I have news for you. That's absolutely happening in our world. So we have teachers in the lower grades who routinely say, "I can't teach math. That's not what I do." You can't teach how to combine numbers? Yes, you can. It's not that hard. Let me teach you how to teach it. You should be able to teach it. If you can't teach it, that's kind of a problem that you're teaching this grade level Well, and most teachers who teach at the lower grades don't often teach at those grades because they love to teach reading. But what happens is children are not getting the dose of what they need in math, and then we detect it at grade 5 and panic. We've missed this window to really prevent that. So he says we need to study our failures, identify the pause points, and find ways for these very complex systems to talk to each other. I served as an expert on a case over the summer, and it was eye-opening to me. Not in my state, in some other state. The attorney found me on the web. Read something I had written and said, I think I'll ask her to be an expert. And so it was really fun. I had never done that before. But I had a chance to read everything that happened to this child. I couldn't put it down. Like, I literally sat at my table in my office and read for like 12 hours. Everything that this child experienced for the child's schooling career. And it was eye-opening because this child got so much expensive and good things. I mean, I could find it. I could find the oral reading progress monitoring fluency data for the child when the child was being pulled out and participating in small group intervention. This is a child who was rarely at school. They found her, they detected her, they delivered intervention, they collected progress monitoring data, they had problem-solving team meetings about her, they eventually ended up doing an evaluation. There was a lot of parent pressure around that. They ended up doing an eligibility evaluation, which is part of why I was in the middle of this now. And in the evaluation, none of it talked to each other. The evaluation didn't include any of her RTI data at all. Said, in fact, that she had been absent like 0 days or 2 days. She'd been absent 50% of the school year every year she'd been in school. None of it talked to each other. None of it talked to each other. And I thought, gosh, it's so remarkable that each piece got done. Imagine if it had talked to each other. Imagine if those pieces and parts had talked to each other. It would have been a better result for the child because the child got lost in that shuffle of what do we call it and what's our legal reaction to this rather than let's just teach a child how to read, which we can't do if we can't get the child to school. So let's get the child to school. And there were hundreds of pages of referral to Department of Family Services. And you know what that says to me? That doesn't make me feel like what a great protection for this child. That makes me feel like what an abysmal failure that was at protecting that child. Didn't work. But nobody talked to each other about any of that. So we need to find what are the active ingredients that make specialized care work, correct and early identification of risk in our setting. This is critical. We should be looking, we should be identifying who is at risk, classes of students who are at risk, correct selection of the intervention tactic using that triangle that I showed you, deploying intervention to whole classes and individual students, addressing system targets. I find most places don't even talk about system targets, but that can be so powerful. And then integrate with your core instruction with leadership decisions, resource allocation decisions. Okay. So if we pay attention to evidence, that's a good start. It won't be enough because we are not going to have stable treatment effects. We have to do those things to make sure that we get stable treatment effects. We have to implement thoughtfully and with more control, and it might look a little different in some contexts compared to others in order to get the results that we know we can get.